$100 trillion. That's one followed by 14 zeros. That is Zimbabwe's biggest denomination note from 2008. That year saw Zimbabwean hyperinflation hit one of the highest levels in history, with the Zim dollar essentially not even worth the paper it was printed on. Now, inflation is down to 200%, still one of the highest rates in the world. Zimbabwe's central bank is introducing gold coins as a hedge. It says to reduce the need for US dollars and curb those runaway prices. So will the bank's plan work? We'll get expert analysis on that in just a moment. But first, DW News Africa's Privilege Mushanyeri filed this report from Harare.
Zimbabwe's new gold coin is named after the country's world-famous Victoria Falls. The Reserve Bank is billing it as a magic bullet in the fight against the country's inflation problems. The central bank's head says the aim is to provide Zimbabweans with a safe store of value and reduce demand for US dollars. Many here prefer the greenback to the weak local dollar, which has lost more than 70% of its value this year.
We do respect the people of Zimbabwe. We know what they've been going through in terms of the fear factor of losing value, and therefore we are providing this gold coin. It's a genuine gold coin to ensure that at least you will save and you invest there.
But here in the capital, Harare, people are not convinced that the new coin offers any solutions to the dire economic hardships they are facing.
Let them use their coins. I don't accept them. I would rather use those US dollars.
If I was in a more financially stable position, it would be something I would invest in, but more as a collectible, not so much for trading.
The new gold coin cost more than 1,800 US dollars at the launch. But buyers should be aware. The central bank says anyone purchasing the coin must hold them for at least 180 days. So, they are hardly legal tender that can easily be converted to cash when immediate need arises. Economic analysts say the measure will likely only benefit a few Zimbabweans with excess cash.
Gold coin is one of the schemes which are going to make people richer, those who are rich, and those who are poorer. And it will not be a good instrument to address the current challenges happening in the economy, particularly the exchange rate spiral and inflation spikes.
Prices of basic commodities have skyrocketed and are further eroding confidence in any monetary and fiscal policies that the government has tried to introduce. With many people living hand to mouth, the government may have a hard time convincing citizens to exchange their greenbacks for gold discs.
We can now speak to Tendai Biti, a constitutional lawyer, member of parliament and former finance minister of Zimbabwe. He joins us now from Harare. Welcome to the program, Mr. Biti. Now, we're talking about the gold coins in Zimbabwe, which the IMF has actually called unusual. No other country has used gold coins in this way. The government says this will reduce the demand for US dollars. Do you think this will work?
It won't work. It won't work because the gold coin is not a, is not a currency. So it's not fungible. You can't go into a shop and buy goods with it. It's not a currency, which is why the Minister of Finance in his budget statement today described it as simply as a store of value. But if it's a store of value, why would anyone want to take US dollars to buy gold coins? So the whole thing doesn't work. The gold coin is basically a means of money laundering. It's basically a means of stealing because it's going to be sold in local currency at an inverted rate, at a rate that is below the market. So crooks are just going to flood it using the local currency, which is cheap, and then you get it outside. So it's going to be an instrument of money laundering because we know that there are billions of dollars in Dubai, in Southeast Asia, which are just going to come, be dry cleaned in Zimbabwe, then be shipped up as gold coins. So it's an instrument of arbitrage. It's an instrument of robbing the poor in Zimbabwe.
Gold has had this reputation for a long time as being fairly stable, as something that people can use to store their fortunes. You don't think that this might help Zimbabweans, especially considering the wild inflation they've seen in the last few decades?
This is not 1500 or 1400 or 1970, where the bullion was so important as a means of storing value. Nowadays, we've got currencies that are not backed by the bullion. So it's really pointless, it's really wasteful to actually use the gold in that antiquated, archaic manner. That is why everyone sees this as strange, including the IMF, because it is unprecedented. It is unprecedented.
So who do you think is benefiting from this? You talk about stealing, but who exactly are these people?
Well, we've got cartels. The Zimbabwean economy is run by cartels. So these cartels have got billions and trillions of dollars in local currency, which they have to convert into something that is valuable. So they're the ones that have put pressure on the Reserve Bank to mint this gold so that they can convert their useless Zimbabwean dollars into something with value and at a low premium. So they're having their cake and eating it. And this is exactly what is happening.
That's Tendai Biti, a constitutional lawyer, member of parliament and former finance minister of Zimbabwe. Thank you for speaking to us. And to analyze this further, I'm joined by Chinai Mutambasere. She is a Zimbabwean development economist based in the UK, and she joins us now from near Manchester. Welcome to DW News Africa, Chinai. We've just seen from a report from our correspondent some skepticism from average Zimbabweans over these gold coins. Are their concerns justified?
Thank you for having me on your show. Absolutely, their concerns are justified. Like we said when the announcement was first made about these gold coins, that indeed the devil will be in the detail of how the central bank intends on operationalizing these. And now that we are here, we have a lot of concerns surrounding the way in which they are minted, surrounding the framework that goes in terms of supporting the gold coins and how they can be accessed and how they can be bought. There are so many discrepancies that actually suggest that as opposed to being a new strategy, we're just seeing the failed interchange auction rebranded and restaged as gold coins.
So who exactly stands to benefit from this, this introduction?
We are again seeing those that have access to RTGS to the value of 805,000 and upwards, which are generally in Zimbabwe the corporate elite. The average salary for a teacher is around 20,000 RTGS a month, so that they'll be able to save to afford one gold coin is going to take them a really, really long time. So generally, similar to what we've seen with the interchange auction, is those that are politically connected, the corporate elites that do have access to north of 805,000 RTGS. But unfortunately, the way in which they will benefit will only seek to benefit the individuals in the way that they will take advantage of potential arbitrage dealing by the fact that they are being pegged at a discounted RTGS rate versus the US dollar. So it's possible to actually buy using your RTGS and sell back at US dollar value to even the banks and be able to make as much as 115% from one gold coin, just from taking advantage of the arbitrage foreign currency dealing, because the gold coins are being pegged at the interchange auction rate, which is a discounted rate and is only accessible by those that hold that amount of RTGS. And generally, those will be the corporate elites.
All right, Chinai Mutambasere, Zimbabwean development economist based in the UK. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Living conditions in Ghana are at their worst in 18 years, with inflation now nudging 30% and their currency, the cedi, losing value. Ghana is also headed for an IMF bailout. The government blames the situation on the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Traders and ordinary citizens are feeling the brunt. Isaac Kaledzi sent us this report from Ghana's capital, Accra.
For 2 decades now, John Kwame Appiah has made a steady living from his electrical goods shop. For him and his employees, that's meant a good income from the sales floor. But now, he fears for his livelihood Appiah says Ghana's economic crisis is hitting his customers hard, and he is suffering on the supply side.
Prices of products and goods have gone very, very high, and it is affecting traders terribly. We are all losing our capital, as I tell you now, because things are not good at all. It comes to purchasing power of the average Ghanaian. It has been reduced drastically. Now people cannot even come to town to buy what they want to buy.
Ghanaians haven't seen inflation this high since Appiah set up his shop 20 years ago. Runaway prices are gnawing away at people's buying power wherever they look. Costs for food and other essentials are surging. Fuel prices going through the roof. For ordinary people, it's a daily struggle just to get by.
There's inflation on everything. Food commodities, fuel prices. So as an average Ghanaian, I receive a salary of 600 cedis. So with 600 cedis, my transport now is like I pay twice of what I used to pay. With an amount of 10 cedis, I can't get a decent meal.
For me personally, I'm finding it very difficult. Yeah, I have a family, I have a wife, I have children, and then I have to also cater for their school fees, and all these are coming with more interest. You understand? Saving at the bank also is another whole thing. The interest rate now is high.
Ghana's economic fundamentals are dire. Public finances are unsustainable. The country's debt to GDP ratio is around 85%. The tax take is low despite a new levy on electronic transactions. Protests and pay disputes forced the government to suddenly make a U-turn and head to the IMF to ask for a bailout. Here is the country's vice president, a former central banker.
With the challenges in accessing the international capital market, balance of payment support was needed to bridge this financing gap, stabilize the economy, and create the space to implement structural reforms and restore debt sustainability. And this is really the reason why Ghana had to go to the IMF.
Economists agree that the crisis could have been avoided if the government had kept tighter controls on spending.
The challenge is we've got issues with excessive, debt borrowing, and we lack discipline in our physical conduct. And so the government have reached a level that the debt levels are extremely unsustainable.
Now, Ghana's politicians want to import help from the IMF, but reports say that won't be in place till early 2023. Meanwhile, John Kwame Appiah can only hope that his customers will keep coming and that his business will keep running.
Well, that's the example of Ghana, but we want to widen this out. So let's bring in Kevin Urama, the African Development Bank's acting chief economist and vice president. Welcome to DW News Africa. You're speaking to us from Washington, where you've been presenting the 2022 African Economic Outlook at the IMF. And this comes at a time when a lot of African countries are really struggling with the economic crises, huge debt. What can these African countries do to make sure they don't become, for example, the next Sri Lanka?
The challenges that are in African countries, just like around the world, because of several overlapping global challenges that we have, has several solutions that can be domestic in terms of what African countries can do, but also there are things that the global community needs to do in order to support Africa to recover from these shocks, including the shocks of debt overhang, as you have mentioned. So one of the key things that needs to be done is for African countries to improve their capacity in mobilizing resources, revenues internally, improving the quality of taxation and also non-tax revenues that comes into the country, into the countries, because that will help to improve and increase the capacity of the countries to fund development. and borrow less.
We've just seen, for example, in Ghana, where there have been even protests, people, the average person, getting hit by this. Several other countries on the continent. From your point of view, just how bad are the continent's poorest countries faring?
Now, the continent's poorest countries in Africa are really suffering from several challenges. Let me talk about one, which was a main theme of the AEO, the impacts of climate change. You know, we have all been talking about the impacts of COVID-19, which is huge. That's pushed over 30 million people annually into abject poverty in Africa. It has caused a lot of jobs to be lost, a lot of employment, unemployment, and so on. But also, we have this challenge that has been persistent, which is the impacts of climate change. That is really creating major challenges for governments around the world, and especially in Africa, losing billions of dollars in infrastructure that are destroyed by climate impacts, losing loss of lives and livelihoods and so on. So African governments really have a lot of challenges that needs a lot of financing support from the developed world in order to support Africa to be able to recover from the many shocks which were not caused by these countries.
Kevin Urama, the Africa Development Bank's acting chief economist and vice president, many thanks for speaking to us. More than 80% of Kenyans say they're suffering under the cost of living crisis, and official figures make clear that high inflation is worst affecting the poorest. Kenyans will get to vote on their leaders soon with the hope of improving living conditions. DW News Africa's correspondent Felix Moringa sent us this report from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi.
Kibera slum is Kenya's biggest informal settlement. And in her kiosk, Josephine Oguta is preparing traditional greens for one of her customers. The cost of basic commodities have doubled, even tripled. But it's Kenya's staple food, maize, that's worrying her the most.
You can take tea without sugar and still survive. You can make greens without cooking oil, but there is no substitute for ugali. The cost of maize flour has risen drastically. That's hurting everyone the most.
Food prices have been going up across the continent. Economist Dr. Exen Iraki says several factors have contributed to the rise.
Supply constraints, the investment in agriculture, war in Ukraine, they have all participated in making inflation go up. And what it means to the ordinary Kenyans that people are suffering. They cannot be able to get enough food. They cannot travel where they want. They cannot pay fees. So the people most affected by inflation are the people at the lower echelons of the society.
Now, just ahead of the elections, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has intervened to cut the price of maize flour by half.
Maize flour shall retail across the entire territory of the Republic of Kenya at the price of Kenya shillings 100, down from Kenya shillings 205 for a 2 kg packet until otherwise directed.
Many Kenyans seem unconcerned that the timing of the measure could be political. They just want cheaper food. The important thing to note is, whether it's a political move or not a political move, Kenyans want maize flour from wherever it will come from.
This happens every election time. This time around, we're telling them they should not increase the maize flour prices after the elections. They should also reduce the cost of other commodities like sugar and rice, since you can't eat ugali every single day.
Josephine is one among the many Kenyans who continue to struggle with the rise in the prices of the basic food commodities. The two leading presidential candidates have promised to deal with the food prices once they occupy office, but she remains doubtful.
Those are empty promises. They're just looking to be elected. When they get to office, they won't change anything.
Empty promises won't feed empty stomachs. At home, Josephine prepares food for her family, not knowing if she will have another meal herself today.
And we'll have a special edition of DW News Africa from our studio in Nairobi, covering the leading candidates and all the issues in Kenya's upcoming elections in next week's show. These school children in South Africa finally have water again after a borehole was drilled in their schoolyard. 4 years ago, Cape Town was facing the threat of day zero, the day when water was expected to run out. That never came to pass because people saved water and the rains came. Now, another town has the same problem. Kebeja, formerly Port Elizabeth in Eastern Cape, has experienced 7 years of drought. Our correspondent Adrian Krish sent us this report.
Not a drop in the tap in Zimbabwe Tembani's house for 7 months now. The supply has run dry. The arrival of the water truck brings some relief, but Tembani knows that it also spells hard work. She has to carry the water all the way home for herself and her 4 grandchildren.
We are getting sick because of carrying this water every day. My joints hurt, I have body pains, I have to take painkillers to sleep or go to the clinic. Especially for us elderly people, the situation is painful.
This dam should provide water for her home, but it's almost empty. It's only filled to less than 15% of its capacity. Only 4% is usable water. Rainfall is getting more and more sporadic, and it isn't as heavy as it used to be.
For 7 years, the area here has been in the grip of a historic drought. But while climate change certainly plays a role, mismanagement, decaying infrastructure and a lack of maintenance certainly do too. It is estimated that about 1/3 of the water supply are lost due to leaking pipes.
The scale of the problem is clear to see all over town. Residents report about 200 leaks every day. The city has employed additional staff for repair works. And new wells are being drilled. Groundwater is supposed to help plug the gap that the missing rainwater has left, the head of water distribution for the municipality says. But why didn't all this happen much earlier?
There are quite a number of reasons. Some of them it's financial arrangements. Obviously, from a municipality point of view, we have got competing priorities from a service delivery perspective. And some of these resources, financial resources, were directed to other projects.
A lot of people we talk to actually blame the municipality for the current situation.
At this point in time, my focus is to be able to deliver the metro and push the day zero. And all our efforts, are going towards that.
Day zero, that's the day when all water reserves will be used up, the worst case scenario. To avoid it, each resident is supposed to use no more than 50 liters of water per day, with the municipality threatening to impose strict controls. In the poor neighborhood of Zimbabwe Tembani, people feel they have been given empty promises for months. Even the water truck that is a lifeline for so many isn't organized by the municipality. It comes from an aid organization called Gift of the Givers.
I blame the municipality, but also the politicians. When it is time to campaign for votes, you find a lot of them here asking for votes. But when the time comes to deliver services to the people, they are nowhere to be found. When we need water, they are nowhere to be found.
Zimbabwe Tembani has given up hope in politics. Her only remaining hope that rain may fall soon, so she will get a break from the hard work of fetching water.